in New Orleans, adopted by the world. Jazz rises at the turn of the 20th century like a new language, shaped by the heat of the Mississippi Delta and the restless movement of people across oceans and borders. It does not appear suddenly. It grows slowly from the cries of street vendors, the syncopated rhythms of Congo Square, the marching bands that parade down Basin Street, and the spirituals carried from the African-American South. Jazz is the sound of a city in motion, its markets alive with voices, its docks filled with travelers, its neighborhoods merging traditions into something bold and new. Nothing about jazz is accidental. Every note carries memory. This is not simply music. It is a testament to resilience, cultural exchange, and the unstoppable desire to be heard. At the dawn of the century, New Orleans stands at a crossroads of migration. Formerly enslaved families move south and west. Caribbean sailors dock with rhythms from Haiti and Cuba. Immigrants from Italy, Ireland, and Eastern Europe arrive with melodies of their homelands. Brass instruments are everywhere, left over from Civil War bands, pawned by veterans, picked up by children in Tremé and Storyville who teach themselves by listening. The city hums like a living workshop, shaping musical possibility. Young players mix blues with ragtime, church hymns with marches, African polyrhythms with European harmony. They do not know they are inventing something revolutionary. They simply play what they feel, bending sound until it mirrors the complexity of the world around them. Jazz is born not from theory, but from survival, joy, and the refusal to remain silent. As the Great Migration begins, millions of African Americans leave the South in search of work, safety, and dignity. They take their traditions with them, foodways, stories, and songs that resist erasure. Among these cultural travelers is the sound of early jazz. Trains heading north carry young musicians who play for pocket change, warming up in passenger cars, improvising in station corridors, chasing opportunity city by city. When they arrive in Chicago, St. Louis, Detroit, and Kansas City, the music adapts to its new surrounding. Urban factories pound out a mechanical beat that finds its way into the rhythms. Dance halls swell with new energy. For many migrants, jazz becomes a bridge between the world they left behind and the future they hope to build. It is a soundtrack to movement, ambition, and the reshaping of Black American life. Improvisation becomes the heartbeat of the new form. Unlike classical compositions that demand precision, jazz welcomes spontaneity, an artist reshaping a melody in real time, answering the moment rather than the page. This is a radical shift in American music. Each performance is unrepeatable, alive, a conversation between memory and invention. Musicians push boundaries, trading solos, bending notes, building harmonies from instinct. To improvise is to trust one's own voice, even when the world tries to suppress it. Jazz becomes an assertion that creativity thrives under constraint, that beauty can emerge even in struggle. In neighborhoods across the country, dance halls fill with people drawn not just to the melodies, but to the freedom embedded within them. Jazz teaches America to value individuality, yet also to celebrate the collective rhythm that holds communities together. By the 1910s and 1920s, Chicago grows into a northern capital of jazz. Migrants from New Orleans meet local musicians eager to learn the new sound. The city's nightlife pulses with possibility. Cabarets, ballrooms, and theaters illuminated by electric lights, their doors open to a generation hungry for movement. Here, jazz becomes louder, faster, more urban. Cornet and trumpet melodies soar above the bustle of city streets. Young musicians gain followings, recording their first tracks for emerging labels that recognize the commercial power of the new sound. Yet, segregation persists behind the scenes, shaping where Black musicians can play and who profits from their art. Despite this, the energy of Chicago jazz cannot be contained. It becomes a force of cultural transformation, influencing fashion, dance, and the social imagination of a rapidly modernizing nation. Across the Atlantic, the world listens. After World War I, American troops returned to Europe, carrying records and sheet music, telling stories of packed clubs and new rhythms, replacing the formality of older traditions. In Paris, London, and Berlin, audiences hear jazz as both exotic and liberating, the soundtrack of a nation reinventing itself. African American bands traveling abroad find in Europe a level of appreciation often denied to them at home. Crowds marvel at their technique, their expressiveness, their willingness to break musical boundaries. The world is changing, and jazz becomes a symbol of that shift. Youthful, rebellious, unpredictable. Its spread across oceans marks one of the first global cultural movements led by African American creativity, reshaping how nations think about modern sound. In Harlem, the 1920s ignite the Harlem Renaissance, and jazz takes center stage. The neighborhood becomes a radiant epicenter for black art, poetry, painting, scholarship, dance, and music, merging into a unified force of cultural rebirth. Nightclubs along Lenox Avenue and 133rd Street fill every evening with the pulse of jazz. The music becomes intertwined with intellectual life. Writers describe it as the voice of a people reclaiming identity. Jazz musicians innovate ceaselessly, blending blues depth with ragtime precision, creating arrangements that mirror the layered complexity of black experience. Harlem proves that jazz is more than entertainment. It is philosophy. It is memory set to rhythm. It is the assertion that African American culture not only belongs in the American story, it leads it. As the Great Depression takes hold, jazz adapts once again. Big band swing rises, offering escape into dance halls at a time when hardship weighs heavily on American families. Orchestras with brass, reeds, and rhythm sections build a wall of sound that fills the nation's consciousness. Swing becomes the country's dominant musical force, shaping fashion, nightlife, and youth culture. People dance not simply for pleasure, but for relief, a temporary reprieve from economic struggle. Jazz also becomes one of the first truly integrated artistic spaces. Musicians of different races, though still constrained by segregation in public life, sometimes perform side by side, united by sound. Swing brings jazz into the mainstream, revealing how music born in marginalized communities can reshape the cultural identity of an entire country. When World War II erupts, jazz follows soldiers across continents. Military bands perform everywhere, from European bases to Pacific outposts, carrying American rhythm to the front lines. This global exposure cements jazz as America's most recognized cultural export. Meanwhile, back home, clubs nurture something new, bebop, dot-a-tight. Musicians gather after hours, pushing against swing's commercial polish and returning to improvisation as a form of intellectual and emotional expression. These fast tempos and intricate harmonies challenge listeners but reward those who approach with curiosity. Jazz evolves into a space where virtuosity meets vulnerability, where artists pursue innovation over popularity. The world may have adopted jazz, but its core remains rooted in the migration stories, struggles, and triumphs of African American life. By the mid-century, jazz becomes a global language. In Japan, Brazil, South Africa, and the Caribbean, musicians absorb its grammar and infuse it with the sounds of their own cultures. Samba merges with swing. African drumming patterns reconnect with their diasporic echoes. European conservatories adopt jazz studies programs. Jazz diplomacy efforts send American artists abroad as cultural ambassadors, using music to build bridges during the tensions of the Cold War. Everywhere it travels, jazz adopts. It listens. It absorbs. It welcomes local rhythms into its embrace. This exchange reshapes the global soundscape, proving that creativity moves more freely than borders ever can. Jazz becomes the clearest example of shared human expression, rooted in a specific history yet open to the world. Through the 1950s and 1960s, jazz deepens into meditation and protest. Cool jazz introduces introspection, while modal and spiritual jazz search for transcendence. At the same time, artists respond to ongoing civil rights struggles, using their music as reflection and resistance. Concert halls echo with compositions that mourn injustice, celebrate resilience, and demand equality. Jazz becomes a diary of a nation in transition, chronicling both pain and possibility. Even as rock and soul rise in popularity, jazz remains a vital force, innovating, questioning, evolving. Its adaptability proves its strength. No matter the decade, jazz continues to reflect the emotional temperature of America and the broader world. In the modern era, jazz becomes a multi-dimensional sphere. Universities teach it. Festivals celebrate it. Artists merge it with hip-hop, R&B, classical, electronic music, and global traditions. The improvisational spirit remains at its core, anchoring new expressions in the same creative courage found in New Orleans over a century ago. Young musicians reinterpret the past, sampling ancestral melodies and blending them with contemporary rhythms. Jazz becomes both archive and prophecy, always remembering, always evolving. For listeners, jazz offers more than entertainment. It is an invitation to witness history moving through sound. Its resilience proves the staying power of cultural expression born from perseverance. Today, jazz stands as America's first global sound, shaped by migration, struggle, innovation, and the unstoppable movement of people seeking possibility. It carries the emotional weight of history and the joyful defiance of communities building beauty from hardship. Jazz reminds us that creativity is strongest when cultures converge, when voices listen to one another, when rhythm becomes a shared language. Its journey from Congo Square to concert halls across the world reveals how art born from pain can uplift generations. This is the story of a music that traveled farther than its creators could imagine, reshaping the world note by note. This has been Roots Renaissance. See you in the next chapter.